Hello, I thought I might do a little live talk about my current series that I'm re-releasing. There are 4 books in the series that have been previously published in anthologies or duologies in this case. And I just thought, seeing I'm re-releasing them, I might tell you a little bit about the history and how I accidentally wrote a series, because it wasn't actually meant to be a series originally. So what I'm talking about tonight is how I came to write each of the books and how it sort of accidentally turned into a series. And I'm talking about my Hearts of Brizvegas series, which is the title I decided to give the series, because basically one or both of the hero or heroine comes from Brisbane originally. I don't actually live in Brisbane, but I did live in Brisbane years ago, and I know the city well, and I have children living in there, and I'm there, very regularly. So I do know Brisbane very well, and I just happened to write a series. So the first book in the series is Swept Away, which originally was meant to be a historical, because a group of indie authors, we all got together, we got to know each other on the Harlequin boards years ago, like 2014, back in the dark ages. And most of us were unpublished at that point. A couple of us of the group were published or under contract. So we decided to do a themed anthology called Beautiful Disaster, and each of us got to choose a disaster. And my disaster was to be tsunami. And originally I was intending to write a historical for it. There was one other person in the anthology who was going to also write a historical. And so my historical was going to be about a tsunami that occurred after the major eruption of Krakatoa, which was something that I was always fascinated by as a child. I remember seeing the movie Krakatoa East of Java, which was really funny because it was actually west of Java, but I suppose they wanted to make the movie sound like it was in the east. So they called it Krakatoa East of Java. But I absolutely was fascinated by volcanoes and Krakatoa in particular, and all of the history around it, the way the world went dark and everything like that. It was just amazing to me as a child. So this was going to be my story. But of course, I got lost in the research hole, because I just, if you write historical, you have to do all the historical things. And I got close to the time when I was due to deliver my little manuscript to the group, and I hadn't finished it. And then the other historical person pulled out of the series, and so I thought, well, I'll write a contemporary. And so then I had to start again, basically from scratch. And so I decided to write it. I was a nurse in my early, before I got married. So, I made my heroine a nurse. That was easy. So, and I love music. I've always wanted to be a musician, but I don't really have any talent at being a musician. I have learnt a lot of musical instruments. I learnt to play the piano and the guitar and the violin as a child. I learned to play the piano accordion, the Irish bouzouki, the penny whistle, the saxophone, and the waltz zither. So this is what a waltz zither is. I didn't want to actually have to try and explain it. It's a German instrument, sort of like a mandolin, but a bit fatter and bigger. So so I just thought I'll just show you rather than try to explain what a waltz zither is. So I actually have quite a large musical instrument collection. Back when I used to work for a living, my hobby was collecting musical instruments because I just find them fascinating. So I don't play them very well, Virginia, but it's on my bucket list to learn, musical instruments. And so I have learned to play a number of them, and I've played around. Those ones that I listed, I have. Hi, Susie. Hi, Belinda and Kathy. So I've actually had lessons with those ones I listed, but I've also played around with some other instruments as well that I have in my collection. I've started actually selling some of the ones that I know I'm never ever going to be able to play. So that's funding my writing career at the moment. So yeah, so with Swept Away, I decided I'd make my hero a musician and a violinist, which I know how to play. So yeah, so my hero is a musician and my heroine is a nurse. You know, not really a placeholder. She's a much better nurse than I ever was, just like my hero, Sean, is a much better musician than I'm ever likely to be. So, so I wrote my story quite quickly, actually. They just flowed, Sean and Sophie's story. And I really loved writing it, and I actually entered it into the Australian Romance Writers of Australia Ruby competition, and it actually finalled the following year. So that was really exciting. So obviously other people liked the story as well. So so that was that story. And the second story in the series, I'm umming a lot. I'm sorry. I did Toastmasters, and they tell you not to a lot, but I'm umming. So the second story, Road Trip Baby, in my first story, Swept Away, thank you, Susie, there's a very brief mention of Sean's sister, who is like a zillion months pregnant, at a party in this book, Swept Away. So so I thought, I'll write her story. Why is she pregnant? You know, as you do. I don't think I've written a single story that doesn't have a link to one of my other stories. I've got over a dozen completed stories, even though I've only published a handful and about a zillion partials. So I wrote Sean's sister's story. That's Fran, and her friend with benefits, Ethan, who is the big brother of her best friend, and how they sort of broke up when she got pregnant. Hi, Dakota. Oh, I've got a crowd. It's so exciting. Yeah, so I wrote that story, and I entered it into the Ruby also, and it finalled. And I also entered it into the New Zealand Koru, and it actually tied for first. So that was very exciting as well. So so that gave me a lot more confidence with my writing anyway. So the third story that's in the series that I accidentally wrote is Man of Ice, which appeared in the Medal Up duology, which I was very fortunate. Nicole Flockton invited me to put in a proposal to Crimson Romance to do an Olympic duology, because Nicole's done quite a few summer Olympic stories, and we decided we might do an Winter Olympic duology together. And so that was really great fun working together and linking the stories. So I imagine that Nicole, now that we've got the rights back, I imagine Nicole will probably publish her story elsewhere. But I've slotted mine into this series because, of course, the heroine coming from Brisbane had to be related to my existing families in Brisbane. And so Belle became the cousin of Sean and Fran. So, and at the time that we were writing the stories, I saw an article. I chose ice skating as my Olympic sport because I'm a Torvalandine just magicked me when I was back in the 80s. I was all grown up. There was no chance I was ever going to learn to ice skate. Especially coming from Cunnamulla as a child, which is way out west in a desert somewhere. But I just loved it, and of course, you know, if I was going to write an Winter Olympic story, it had to be ice skaters. And I saw an article about an Australian ice skater, and they actually matched him up with a Russian ice skater, and they had to get special permission from the ice skating board, the federation, to actually for that ice skater to come and skate for Australia. And I thought, oh, this is great. I can actually choose an Australian ice skater and an overseas ice skater. So I actually chose to write an Ukrainian ice skater who used to ice skate for Russia and gets really annoyed when people think he's Russian. So, so you know, he's got a bit of character anyway, and he lived up to his name, Man of Ice, and that's why I titled the story that. So that's the third one, and the fourth one, the third one will be coming out again in the next couple of weeks. The other two are already out. Then the fourth one appeared in an anthology called Kiss Me last August, and the hero in that is Bell from Man of Ice's older brother, and he's a divorcee, recently returned to Australia, and he's a doctor. I love professionals. I just love professionals. And I mean, just about every doctor in my life has been yeah, gorgeous, if older. But anyway, I just, yeah, I love medical romances and things like that, and I'm a big Betty Neal's fan. So, you know, doctors just make ideal heroes for me. And his his heroine is the sister of Ethan, who is in Road Trip Baby, the one that's just released today. And she is a sports professional. She does things like the Iron Woman Challenge, and she trains celebrities in fitness and things like that. So she's sort of like one of these dream characters that I could never, ever be, because I've never been good at sport, never likely to be. I think I had a good eye for a ball. I remember catching a ball once, playing softball as a child at school, but that was pretty much it. I enjoyed swimming, but I have a left-right dysfunction where I'm not very good left-right, which probably didn't help with the musical instrument playing either. So yeah, so I was never ever going to be. So, you know, she's maybe my imaginary what I would be if I was a fabulous sports person. So yeah, so that's my series that I never intended to write, and as I say, they've all been published in different anthologies and things, starting in 2016. But now I've bundled them all together, and they're being published one after another under the Hearts of Brizvegas series title. There will be more in the series. I've got 2 more ideas that I'm working on for that series, and they will come down the track. I'm also still working on my Brizvegas Billionaires series. Tell Me No Lies was the first one of that, but I have several others that I'm working on for that series. So yeah, so I'm basically working on putting out most the stories that I've already written that I think are worth reading in these series, because most of them are set in Brisbane and Gold Coast. I'm also working on another series that's a rural series, but you'll hear more about that later. So so that's pretty much it. I have talked endlessly about me and what I have done, and so the one Road Trip Baby, which is out today, and was out previously, obviously, they're all re-releases, so if you've already read them, don't buy them again. So, or you can if you like. But Road Trip Baby, Ethan is actually a scientist who works at a university but does military contracts and things like that. I actually used to work at the University of Queensland back before I moved to the town I'm living in now, and I worked in the geography department of all places, which actually I really enjoyed the map section. I actually got to draw some maps for some of the students, lucky students. And his heroine, Fran, is a public servant who works in for politicians, you know, quite high up in the department of whatever department. And that's, I've also had some experience in that, because I've been on an advisory committee for disability in the education department. So I get to visit Education House every now and then, and get to see how it all works. And so obviously when I put Fran there, I sort of had an idea on the sort of jobs that she could be doing in the public service. So that's her. So both very career-oriented people until a pregnancy sort of blows everything out of the water. You know, they had this lovely little arrangement and then everything changed. And that's Road Trip Baby. So, well, thank you very much, everyone. Has anyone got any questions they'd like to ask me? Because I'm very happy to keep talking. It's nearly 11 o'clock at night here, so, and everyone else in the house is in bed, so I am quite happy to chat. Yes, so no questions? So everyone's just stunned. I can see that. They've left the video on and they've gone off to make a cup of coffee or something, probably. But that's okay. This will be, obviously this video will be available to look at later. So, and I can keep writing and things, I suppose. Thank you very much again for coming in and watching, and I will see you online. Thank you very much. Good night.